So, another 12 months on the Westminster roller coaster as MPs pack their bags and prepare for the Christmas break. Rory Bremner, fresh as a daisy, not at all jaded, joins me to look back over the past year. Rory.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, we were hoping to have the Prime Minister here, but unfortunately he's got a diary clash. But he has agreed to come here and do his bit when everyone else has gone home. So, what was the greatest scandal of 2007? If you think it was Northern Rock, dial 07711 and add a 1. If you think it was the government's missing discs, add a 2. And if you think it was the phone voting scandal at ITV, add a 3. The lines have closed, but please keep voting. And what an exciting time of year. Last night we had the final of X Factor. Next weekend we discovered the winner of Strictly Come Dancing. And on Tuesday we'll find out the winner of the dance-off for Liberal Democrat leader. And now performing the Lib Dems, excuse me, will Chris Hoon and his dance partner Nick Clegg please take to the floor. Well, it does mean the party will have a new leader for Christmas, when most of us would have settled for a pair of socks. Yes, the Spice Girls are back in town, and the world's finally told George Bush what it wants, what it really, really wants. Even the government's getting in on the festive spirit by releasing a Christmas record, a 2-CD compilation featuring 25 million names and addresses under the title, Now That's What I Call Incompetence. They were the 25 million people David Abrahams was using as proxies for his donations to the Labour Party. The year began with the Prime Minister under fire, embattled, being investigated by police over party funding, under attack from the generals, and ended identically. In the process, Gordon Brown made the transition from last year's Mr. Bean counter to this year's Mr. Bean. The new Prime Minister promised a change of style. British jobs for Scottish people. I was brought up to believe in Christian values and Christian principles. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's wife. Although, to be honest, that was never going to be a problem. Mr. Brown took over in the summer and had a quiet beginning, interrupted only by a terrorist attack, an outbreak of foot and mouth, and the worst flooding the country had ever seen. Yeah, see what happens when you get rid of me? Huh? Weather now, outlook for the next few weeks, well, plagues in some areas of the country, turning to floods, locusts, possibility, frogs. Can't rule them out. Yes, having weathered those early storms, Mr. Brown's popularity was such that for a few short weeks, election fever swept the country. Or at least Westminster, since the rest of us are immune to election fever, even during elections. We only vote en masse for things like Big Brother, where the winner is either mad, sex mad, or so offensive they're constantly forced to apologise. So you can see why the Tories picked Boris Johnson to run for Mayor of London.
You cockneys, you like a joke? You like a joke? Well, why not vote for one?
In the end, Gordon Brown decided against going to the country, but even his own former colleagues conceded the episode was damaging.
I think it's very dangerous to flirt with the electorate. I only flirted with 2 of them, and look what happened to me.
Well, I mean, they used to say Gordon was Stalin. Well, I remember Stalin. I went to see him once, but he wasn't in. But don't forget, the former head of the civil service did say that Gordon Brown treated his cabinet colleagues with almost complete contempt. But when you remember those colleagues included Jeff Hoon, Patricia Hewitt, John Prescott and Des Brown, well, you just think, what a brilliant judge of character.
2007 did bring some changes. There are the things you take for granted now that you'd never have seen under Tony Blair, like a Prime Minister calling the Chancellor Darling. In Mr. Darling's first budget and Gordon Brown's 12th, they cut inheritance tax, part of a process of redistribution, which also saw the government redistribute £24 billion to Northern Rock. How did that come about? Here's our business editor, Robert Peston. Viewers may find some parts of his report distressing. Well, Hugh, the crisis in Northern Rock was merely a British consequence of a global squeeze on credit brought about by the collapse of the American subprime mortgage market. In simple terms, Hugh, your house loan's connected to your bank loan loan's connected to your interbank loan, the interbank loan's connected to the... Yes, thank you, Robert, I think we get the picture. It was a year where many of the big characters left the Westminster stage. Tony Blair, John Prescott, John Reid, no longer fit for purpose, Ming Campbell, Jackie Smith, no, hang on, that's next month, isn't it? To be replaced by a series of unremarkables that wouldn't look out of place in a Lib Dem leadership contest. Yes, both Labour donor David Abrahams and canoe man John Darwin went to extraordinary lengths to try to hide their identity. They needn't have bothered. If they really wanted to remain anonymous, the best thing to do would be to join Gordon Brown's cabinet. But where will the characters go? For some, it's either panto or the reality shows.
Oh, well, there you go. From Deputy PM to Panto in Hull. Where's Cinderella? I'm off on the pull.
Hello, I'm Michael Howard. In my new role as Chief Executive of the Blood Transfusion Service, I'll be personally sampling the entire range from A to O.
For the Lib Dems, it was the end of the Ming dynasty.
When I took over, it was quite clear what the party needed. They needed someone who wasn't either drunk, in the closet, or prone to sex games with a male prostitute. Well, I've done that for 18 months. Now I want to enjoy myself.
The autumn brought an unexpected second honeymoon for David Cameron.
Well, it's a funny week it is, Westminster. You know, first we had a Cameron bounce, then we had a Brown bounce, then we had another Cameron bounce, and we've even had a Vince Cable bounce, and he's only the night watchman.
Part of Vince Cable's success was that people didn't really expect anything of him, unlike the England football team, who started off with low expectations and still failed to live up to them, much to the amusement of their former manager.
Well, not so easy, is it, Mr. McLaren? But now we have a new manager from Italy, Fabio Capello, the Capello di tutti i capelli.
Elsewhere in sports, South Africa won the Rugby World Cup.
Sweet low, sweet chariot. Winston Churchill, Lord Nelson, Margaret Thatcher. Your boys took a hell of a beating.
The former South African president finally received due recognition this year with a statue.
They already have my column in Trafalgar Square. Now they have the rest of me opposite Parliament.
As Gordon Brown continued to struggle, some in the party began to pine for his predecessor. Well, you know, what we miss about Tony is his style. If ever he was caught out or in a pickle, all he'd do was shrug it off or make a joke, or better still, come out with the most enormous fib. Sometimes people wouldn't work it out for years. How we laughed. Mr. Mandelson spent the year in Europe, where the Prime Minister was constantly criticised. Can the Prime Minister tell us why we're not having a referendum on the new constitution?
Well, because it's not a constitution, it's a reform treaty. Well, in that case, can the Prime Minister tell us what's the difference? Well, if it were a constitution, you'd be having a referendum on it, and you're not, so by definition it must be a treaty. Next question.
Television was shaken by a series of scandals over telephone voting, with even Blue Peter accused of deception when they overruled their viewers and named their cat Socks. Oh, it could have been worse. They could have named it after a prophet. Here with Thought for the Day is the Archbishop of Canterbury. If you go down to the mosque today, you'd better go in disguise. For every bear that ever there was has gathered there for certain, because today's the day the teddy bears launch their jihad. George Bush's own war against terror received a setback when intelligence stated the Iranians weren't developing a nuclear bomb. Since when did I go by intelligence? You know, if they're not working on a bomb, we're not doing enough to threaten them. And we need to continue to threaten them, because if we don't, they won't build a nuclear weapon, and we can't attack a country if it doesn't have any weapons. Not again, so soon after the last one. George Bush's erstwhile opponent, Al Gore, campaigned on the environment, supported by his boss, Bill Clinton.
Well, I think that Al Gore's success just goes to show that not only can you save the environment, but the environment can save you.
And what about yourself, Mr. Clinton? Is it true that you've been offered a position on the Hillary?
Yeah, it's been a while since that happened.
And finally, after a year which saw the return of the Spice Girls, Led Zeppelin and Foot and Mouth, it's tempting to conclude that everything comes around again if you wait long enough.
Who knows? Even a Conservative government. Who'd have thought it?
Andrew.